Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney and we're here with another Sunday sew along. Today is part 2 of the Itch to Stitch Mountain View pull-on jeans, and today we're tackling the front of the pants. Now I wanted to do a little caveat here. So I have used quilting cotton, and I'm also showing you how to draft to take the pockets all the way to the front if you'd like. Now that does reduce the stretch a little bit, so if you do have an issue with your hips being much larger than your waist, like if you have to grade a few sizes, you may want to not use quilting cotton, and one suggestion I have is to use power mesh because that will help smooth things out, but it will still have the stretch that you need to pull things up and over. So if you don't want to use quilting cotton, power mesh is excellent way to go. And because we kind of applique the front part of the pant onto the part that you see behind the pocket, you could use whatever you want. So for both those pocket pieces, you could very easily use power mesh to help give you the control that you want, but also still be stretchy. So just wanted to put that caveat in there. All right, guys, as always, if you enjoy this type of content, I do have a Ko-fi account, which is like a virtual tip jar. Much appreciated. Anything you can drop in there. It all goes back into the channel and helps me with equipment, supplies, all that kind of stuff, mostly for the sew-alongs and the tutorials. Okay, guys, that's all I have. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I will see you all next week. Bye. All right, let's get sewing today, guys. Okay, I'm only going to be doing the corduroy on camera. I'm not even sure if I'm going to do my denim pair or try maybe a different pattern, just because I'm intrigued to try some different patterns. Or do I go with the tried and true? It's such a hard thing. But I do want to make these, obviously, these in the corduroy. So we did talked through all of our pieces yesterday. Last week, we're going to be doing the fronts of the pants today, or the jeans. So I've got my front piece here, which is just one piece for the front. You want to make sure you've got all of your notches clipped, and also you want to make sure that you've got your, the little dot. Can you see that? That's fluff, but the little dot that's there, the bottom, well, it should be the bottom of the zipper if you're putting a zipper in here, but we're not putting a zipper in here. It's just where we're going to pivot to then go around the crotch curve. So we've got our fronts. We have our front pocket yoke, which is going to get sewn onto the back of the pocket pieces. And then we've got our pocket facing and our pocket, front pocket. I actually had to use 2 different fabrics for this just because I didn't have enough. Again, I drafted a piece that'll go directly to the fly on mine, but yeah, you can use the ones that come with the pattern. So they are coordinating fat quarters, but I had to use 2 different. Okay, so those are the pieces we're using today to get our fronts completed. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is put all of these pattern pieces out of the way so we don't get confused. We are going to be working on the pocket facing. Yes, the pocket facing. So this is the piece that has the cutout, and we're going to be sewing that to the pants first. So I'm going to move the front yoke, I think it's called, and the pocket, front pocket, to the side for a second. Okay, so let's talk about my setup really quick. I am using Gutermann Mara 100 thread to do my sewing. Now, I am not going to do contrasting top stitching. I am going to do top stitching, just not contrasting top stitching because I just want this to be very subtle on this pair, but I will tell you when to switch to your top stitching thread if you would like to, and what settings you'll want that on. And again, I use, if I want like major top stitching, like if I'm making a pair of jeans and I wanted the contrasting top stitching, I use the Gutermann Mara 30, and that is all linked in the description box below. Okay, so, but I'm going to be using the same thread to sew my pants as I'm doing for the top stitching. I am sewing with a 2.5 millimeter stitch length, and what else? I'm using a size 14 ballpoint needle, actually. Sometimes I find that a ballpoint needle works a little bit better on fabrics that have a lot of stretch, like woven fabrics that have a lot of stretch in them. So that's what I'm using for today. Okay, I'm going to do the pocket on one side, and then obviously you're just going to do the second side. It's done the same way. You only need to see me do one. Okay, so we're going to start with this one. And we are going to be sewing our right sides together. Now, this is a little counterintuitive because I want the pretty side to be the side. Actually, we're going to do this one differently. I do want the pretty side to be the one that's inside, but I want that to be on the actual pocket bag piece because that's what you see when you're pulling your pants on and off. For this one, it's the obvious right side. I'm going to put the right sides together here at the pocket. We have 1/2 inch seam allowances. You know, this should all fit nice and neat there. The other plus about corduroy is that things stick. It's a very sticky fabric, so usually things stay put and you can sew without pins very easily. I'm going to talk about pressing corduroy too. All right, so we're doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and we're just going to sew this pocket edge. Oops, I was basting last time I used this and had my back stitch turned off. Okay. Here we go, all the way around. All right, now, once we've got that all sewn, you're going to want to go in and clip this really sharp curve that's right here, and you just want to clip to, but not through your stitching line. You can also, if you're worried about this being bulky, you can trim this down. So there, I've clipped to, but not through just that tight curve. Because now we're going to go and turn this right side out, and you're going to give this a really good press, and you want to make sure that your pocket is pulling into the inside. And then I'm going to meet you back here, and we're going to do some top stitching. So if you need to switch to top stitching thread or move to a different machine for top stitching, now is the time to do it. I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so we've got everything pressed nicely to the wrong side. Once you do that, everything should line up relatively nice and neat. Now, one of the pluses of working with corduroy, this would be the same with denim, is that it has cotton in it, so it presses really easily. Corduroy obviously has a nap, and so you can easily crush the nap if you're not careful. One tip that I have is to use a scrap of, a sizable scrap of your corduroy on top of your pressing surface with the wales going up, and if you press, so the corduroy would be laying face up on my pressing mat, so then when I'm pressing this, you're pushing it against, instead of a hard surface or a flat surface, against that those wales, and it will help it not crush as badly. Also, I try and press from the wrong side as much as possible. Even when I'm pressing out my yardage, I do it from the wrong side. That way I'm not messing up the nap of my corduroy. But again, corduroy doesn't mess up as bad as, say, like a velvet or something. So it's a little more forgiving. Okay, so I've got everything pressed nicely to the wrong side. So now I have switched my stitch length. You can go to like well, if you're using the Gutermann Mara 30, I would go to a 3.5. I've got mine at a 3.5, and we're going to do some top stitching. Now, there's many options that you can do here for your top stitching. I'm just going to be doing one line of top stitching. Again, I do want these to be like jeans, but I want it to be a little more subtle, which is why I'm using the same thread, same color thread. Just a little less noticeable. But if you're doing regular jeans, you could do 2 lines of top stitching, just one. It's kind of up to you. That's kind of the fun of doing jeans. Pull on or regular. So I'm just going to do one line of top stitching about a 1/4 inch away from my folded line. Just going to go around the horn here. And there we have it. Okay. All right, now we're going to set this aside. We're going back to regular thread. So this is where making jeans comes in really handy if you have a second machine. Otherwise, you are switching thread a lot, and it can take a lot of time. Also, I forgot to mention that we're doing steps 1 through 12 today on the instructions. So if you need a little, if you're walking along with me on the instructions. Okay. Obviously do the same thing on the other side of the pants. So now we're going to be working with the pocket piece and the front yoke, I think it's called, which is basically, I mean, it's going to get appliqued onto the front of the pocket, like so. Okay? So we are going to Just going to show you on one. Obviously the other is done the same way. Oh, but this time I want this to be on the inside of my pants so that I'm seeing it. So this is actually going to be considered the wrong side, even though it's clearly the right side. So that actually does not go with that one. It goes with this one. So that way, this will be on the inside of my pocket, but then when I put my pants on, I see the brightly colored side. Just makes it a little more fun, but you can do whatever you want. So this is going to get appliqued on to here, like so. All right, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. The instructions have you just zigzagging this on, which you could totally do. Just do a zigzag stitch and basically zigzag top stitch this right into place here on the front of the front pocket. But I actually prefer to serge my edge and then top stitch it down just with a straight stitch on the machine. So it's kind of up to you. So I'm just going to go over to my serger and I'm going to serge this curved edge here of my pocket pieces. And then I will meet you right back here and we'll get these sewn down. Oh, right. So remember, we're considering this the right side, even though it's technically the wrong side of the fabric. So this is going to be the right side. So now I'm putting the wrong side of this little yoke piece onto the right side of my pocket fabric. I know that's a little counterintuitive. Like so. And now I'm just going to stitch using my 2.5 inch stitch length. So we're back to regular thread again. I know it can be a lot. And we're just going to top stitch this in place. Now, a lot of times, because you have to top stitch with the, I mean, maybe we could figure it out. Feel it through there? But we're going to top stitch with this on top. But I just follow and stitch kind of like right in the middle of the serging line. Again, you can zigzag stitch this. But sometimes, because we've got this on top, this stretch fabric wants to get unwieldy. See, I just got a little pleat in there against the non-stretch, but you know what? That's hidden underneath your pants, so you're fine. Don't worry about it. Okay. We just need to get that on there. You could also go ahead and baste it at the top and the side. Just make sure you're within the seam allowance, so maybe like at 1/4 of an inch. All right, so now that piece and the pocket piece are one. You can go ahead and hit that with some steam real quick. And then we're going to come back, well, hit it with some steam, come back, and then we're going to sew this to the other pocket piece. Okay, so we have our front where we've got our one piece of the pocket sewn onto the front. Oops, sorry. That's my computer saying it's finished editing. And this is why we wanted the to switch the right side and wrong side so that we see the pretty side when we put on our pants. So now we're going to put our pocket pieces right sides together. So, you know, our pocket pieces or our little appliqued yoke piece is on that side. And we're just going to sew this bottom edge right along here at 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. Again, using the 2.5 inch, we're still using regular thread, 2.5 inch stitch length, yada, yada, yada. 1/2 of an inch seam allowance through here. You could definitely put pins if you want. Also, if this seam allowance gets a little wonky, it's not that big of a deal because it affects nothing. It's just how deep your pocket goes. Okay, now we can finish off this seam allowance, whether you're pinking it, zigzagging, doing the faux overlock on your machine, or a regular serge seam. Go ahead and finish this seam allowance all the way through here, and then I will meet you back here to baste. Okay, so now we've got this edge all nice and serged. Okay, so we're just going to lay everything all nice and neatly together here from the back first. And it needs to be, you know, it should line up technically, but if it's a little wonky, got a little stretched out with sewing, we can always trim off. We're not too concerned about that. Okay, so I'm just going to pop in a couple of pins to keep everything nice and flat. But basically, we're just going to be basting around, basting your pocket pieces to the side seam to the waistband and to the fly here, just to keep everything as one. So that's how everything's going to look nice and neat when we're all done. Okay, I like to sew though with the pocket side up. No real reason, but all right, so I want to sew this at, I don't know, like 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Some of my pocket might be hanging over the edge here. Not a big deal to trim that down later. But I'm just going to be sewing right until I go, past that pocket edge there. And then we're going to go over here. I can feel that pocket edge right there. And we're just going to baste 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch, just within that seam allowance, that 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so this just keeps everything nice and in place. So now you can go and just I like to hit all of this with steam because a lot of times this curve gets kind of stretched out. Isn't that fun though? When I pull my pants on, I'll see this pretty pocket there. I love fat quarters for pocket pieces. Just makes life just a little more fun. So you see I've got like a little bit of excess there. I'm just not even going to worry about that, but you could trim that off if it's bothering you. But I'm going to hit this with steam, and then I'll meet you right back here, and we're going to do our faux fly. Okay, now it's time to do our faux fly. So I have marked, there's a notch up here at the top. I have marked a straight line from there down to the dot. So we're going to sew along that line, and then once we get to the dot, we're going to continue at 1/2 of an inch all the way to the edge here. Typically if you were making this with a fly, it would be basting, and then you would sew, regular from here. But it's regular stitch, 2.5 millimeter, all the way down. I've only marked this straight edge because then I can use my raw cut edge for my 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way through here. So we're just going to be sewing because this is a faux fly. There's a few different ways that I've seen faux flies done, but we're following the pattern here. So I'm just going to start up here at the top, sewing my fronts together. Obviously I've done the same pocket treatment to both fronts. Okay, and then half of an inch. Okay, so I've sewn all the way down 1/2 of an inch. All right, now I'm going to go and serge these together, actually, all the way along. It can get tricky when you're serging and trying to serge into that corner. Just kind of do the best you can just to kind of catch it. And a lot of times I'll barely catch the fabric and it'll just be like thread that kind of goes across here. That's fine. You just want to keep things from fraying as best, or not fraying as best as possible. So I'm going to go serge these like this, and then we're going to press everything to the left when worn. So once we've serged, everything's going to get pressed to the left. Yeah, because I want everything to the left. Let me think this through. Yes, everything's going to get pressed to the left, so we don't have to clip into anything. So the entire seam allowance here is all going to get pressed to the left. And then once I've done that, I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so I've got everything serged and pressed to the left. All right, so now we're going to flip everything over, and now if you're using contrasting thread, you want to go and switch back over to that. Sorry, it does get kind of annoying. All right, so first we're going to do a line of top stitching really close, about an 1/16 of an inch, right along that fold line on the, well, it's the right-hand side, but it's left-hand side when worn, but on this side of the seam. So we're just going to do all the way around and go all the way down to the bottom really quickly. Again, if you're using separate thread, you need to switch to that now. And I'm going, if you're doing it like me, I'm doing I just switched it to 3.5 inch, 3.5 millimeter stitch length. So I'm just going to be sewing right to the right. So I'm sewing onto the bulk of where we just pressed that whole fly piece. All right. So now I've done that. Now you can go in and, this just gets kind of wonky because you've got a curve here. But you can go in and mark your fly piece here if you want. But I can feel that through here, and so I'm not going to. But if that makes you feel better to like draw that in so you can follow it, definitely do that. Because this is all, you know, faux. This isn't keeping anything in place or aiding in anything. Be a little more cavalier about this. But I'm just following that. Like so. And you can go ahead and put bar tacks there if you want, just for the look, especially if you're using contrasting thread. I'm not going to, but you can definitely, because they're not functioning, but you can definitely do that if you want. But I am going to go ahead and make this look a little bit more like it's actual fly. And I'm going to come back up 1/4 of an inch by my first line of stitching, just in this lower piece here. Because I would do this if I had an actual functioning fly. And I just go up just a wee bit. Oopsie. I went a little too far. And then I'm going to come back along where I've top stitched. And there we have it. And then I would, you know, you could bar tack there if you wanted to as well. I'm not going to again because there's no real need for it. I'm trying to make this somewhat streamlined, but there we have it. And that, folks, is it for your fronts. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. Everything should be nice. Let's look at the back here before we go. Everything should be nice, tacked into place. Oh, I also wanted to show you. See, I hardly hit that little area. Like, I've got a lot of excess thread there, so don't worry if that does that to you too. It's fine. So yeah, I've got everything stitched in place here on the back. I've got my fly, my pocket pieces going into the fly, so it's going to keep everything nice and smooth there on my C-section part of my belly. And yeah, life should be good. Okay, next week we will meet back here and we will put together the back part of the pants. I will see you then.